Hey everyone, thanks for joining me here today on Teslanomics Live. This week there is insurmountable things to talk about. I've got a new live streaming setup, so hopefully the audio and everything will be good, and we can just kind of dive right into this stuff. First and foremost, thank you all for joining me, and thanks for all the questions that people submitted in advance. I ping everyone on the email list in advance, so if you're not on that, go to teslanomics.co. Make sure to join the email list, and then you will be prompted every time we do this with the ability to submit your questions in advance, which will almost always ensure that they get added. So without that, I thought let's dive right into it. So first up, my long for the week. And if you don't recall, I kind of break this into two major segments, the long and the short. So the long is something I'm betting on. So I'm borrowing a term from kind of the stock market where you're long on a stock or a company. And my long here is the EV boom, and it's happening. We've talked a lot about it, but even now some major oil companies are coming out predicting that the EV market will grow to be about 30% of the overall market by 2030. And let me show you where I found this. It was on Bloomberg, where they're a great source of data on this. And there were some recent predictions that this company made, and they were talking about just the future of the auto industry and what's going to happen there. So I found this. I am long on this because, you know, car companies and energy companies get it. The transition to renewable forms of transportation and energy are sort of inevitable. And these guys putting these numbers out there really help the whole industry. And it's always good to see that. So I would encourage you, and the link to this video will be in the description. You can go find that. And there's a great video that Bloomberg put together. As you would imagine, they're a great media company. And you can check that out. But that's kind of the main point there, is that they're big on this. Now, part of the reason is because battery prices are dropping, and Tesla is playing a big part of this with the Gigafactory, or the multiple Gigafactories, which we'll talk about here in a second. Now, in 2018, Volkswagen is actually making a big play as well with an Audi SUV and the first high-speed U.S. charging network to rival Tesla's supercharger network. So Volkswagen is getting into this game big. And then after that, you're going to see a lot more of the big players in. So Jaguar, Volvo are also both promising cars on the way. And by 2020, that's when it really starts to reign EVs. And Mercedes, VW, General Motors, Ford, all of these cars are releasing dozens of new electric vehicles. So in the next 2 to 3 years, I think we're going to see worldwide just a big boom for electric vehicles, and I think that's fantastic. I'm a huge fan, obviously. I assume you guys probably are too, or interested. And there's so many benefits besides the environmental one. Cost benefits, efficiency gains. It's quiet. And apologize, they're doing major construction outside of my office here. So if you hear any of that, there's a part of it right there. So VW actually, and there's an article from Electric about this, which I'll switch over to now, is planning to do a $10 billion investment in electric vehicles. They're still doing more on the other side, but there was a really interesting quote here from their chief executive that said the future of driving is electric. I'll highlight it here for you so you can see that, and maybe I'll even try to blow this up. We'll see if... I don't know how this browser works. Volkswagen chief executive Matthias Mueller conceded that the future of driving is electric. That is crazy. And if you don't know, Volkswagen actually owns a ton of brands and everything. So they're not just a small manufacturer that sells like cute Jettas and stuff like that. They sell, tons and tons of different cars for different brands that they own. So that's big, and that just kind of reinforces the long position here that EVs are just getting bigger and better. Now, another sign of this is Leonardo DiCaprio becoming the spokesperson for BYD, which is a Chinese manufacturer. So let me show you this here, and I'll put a link to this. I'll play the video, but just so as in that you can that you can see what's going on there. Now, this is Leonardo DiCaprio, who obviously is a big supporter of fighting climate change with his movie Before the Flood, which I highly recommend if you haven't went out to see that. But BYD is really doing a big push here. And in fact, China is where they are the biggest EV market by far. By early next year, Beijing is going to require automakers in China to ensure that at least 8% of all vehicles they manufacture are electric. Now that's big because there's a lot of cars and a lot of people in China. So the country had more than 1 million electric vehicles as of 2016. That's an 87% increase over the previous year. And if you look at a video where I talked about this called EV sales in 2016, should scare the oil industry or something like that. And I broke it down, and in that, the data there also shows that EVs in China are extremely popular and growing rapidly because of all the stuff that they're doing. Let me stop that video from playing. So China is where it's at, and it's big there, and I think we're going to continue to see China pushing forward, not only with EVs in general, but just all kinds of things with solar and renewable energy. I mean, they are having to have a lot about, they're having to deal with a lot of the pollution issues that here in the U.S. we dealt with back in the 70s with the Clean Air Act. So, kudos to them, and I think it's exciting to see this. But you can go watch the commercial. It's kind of odd to me just to see Leo like that, but hey, I'm proud that they're doing stuff like that and that they're making a big difference. So there you have it. Now, the next thing to talk about is my short. But let me mention first. So Elon did a TED Talk, and they just this morning released the video of it. It's about 40 minutes long. I'm not going to play it for you here. I'll put a link to it so you can go check it out. But I highly recommend it if you're a fan of this stuff, where he goes into all kinds of different topics, and we'll be covering a lot of those here in just a second. But this is actually my short. My short for the week, something I'm betting against, is this Boring company. It's fun to say, and I know there's a lot of fans out there, friends of mine, that think it's great. The basic idea, and let me go to this is a photo of the machine. So Boring, not as in lame or like not interesting, but boring as in digging tunnels. This comes from basically Elon hating traffic in LA and wanting to create what he considers a three-dimensional driving environment where we build buildings up from the ground and we have 3 dimensions there, but we drive just 2-dimensionally on the surface of the road. So he wants to create a 3-dimensional one down below, and he can go, he goes into detail about why. But I want to show you this video here, and this is posted on Teslanomics. I think these were the first guys to actually do this, and I'll walk you through it. So the basic idea is that you're driving on the street, and as you're driving, you pull up to these what they call electric skates. Imagine it's the same thing as your Tesla, but just bigger, and you drive into it, and then it lowers you down into the underground tunnel system. Now, in the underground tunnel system, your car is not actually driving this. The skate is driving it, and it's on a track. And one of the keys is actually how small the tunnel can be, because the skates themselves will be controlled, all computers and everything like that. So there won't be people driving, so the crash rate will be almost non-existent. So you won't have, anyways, the idea is to reduce that. Now, because of that, you can increase the speed as well up to 200 kilometers or about 124 miles per hour. And so the idea there would be you could have public transportation vehicles like this. You could have your own vehicles using this. And you could get, in their estimates, from Westwood to LAX in about 5 minutes, where typically that would take about 30 minutes, but with LA traffic would be closer to an hour. Sorry, let me turn my air conditioning off. So this video is cool. I love what he's thinking about. I love all the things here, but I'm short on it because it's just scary to me. I could imagine congestion and traffic and all this crap underneath the city, and who knows what's going to happen if there's an earthquake. It's so new and so different to me that it's a bit scary. So that's, maybe I'm a wuss, but to me, that's kind of my short and why I'm short on it. I wish we could have other reliable ways of transportation that would solve this, or maybe we don't need as much transportation because we don't need to travel as much. But hey, if it works, I'm all for it, man. I think it'd be cool, but at the same time, I'm scared about it. Okay. So let's break down and talk about the Model 3. everyone, or if you don't know, the Model 3 is scheduled to begin production in July, and Elon confirmed that. So now what we have is him saying that production will begin, which means that in June, some of the not release candidates, those are already out there, and there's tons of shots of these, which are so cool to see. But there's actually the founder series, which are for employees only, should be coming out late June if real production is going to begin July. So he talked about this in the TED Talk, and his words were looking good to start production in July. That's fantastic. I think that gives investors and reservation holders like myself, great reason to celebrate. Now, one of the interesting things he mentioned though about the Model 3 is that it'll have autopilot or full self-driving, but not the same way the Model S and X and even a lot of other cars are doing with LiDAR and these kind of really expensive radars. And I mean, that does make sense because in order to actually put those in the system, it's expensive. These systems are really expensive. Then you need more hardware to power and run these things, computers to process the information, etc. So instead, the idea is for the Model 3 to be fully self-driving with only cameras and GPS. Now, this is an ambitious claim, but here's the premise, and here's the idea. And this is from Elon. This is what he said. Once you solve cameras for vision, autonomy is solved. If you don't solve vision, it's not solved. You can absolutely be superhuman with just cameras. And I encourage you to go watch the TED Talk where he brings this up, and he kind of goes into it a little bit more detail. But the basic premise is that if you can teach the computer to see as a human does, because essentially that's all we have, then you can have all the great capabilities, in fact, far better than a human by using just those components and being able to just figure out the road based on the cameras, not necessarily LiDAR and all those things. Now, I wonder what will happen to the safety features here, because we've seen some really, scary but amazing videos where the Model S will detect, or Model X as well, would detect that there's a crash ahead of the car in front of you and stop in advance of that. So I think we'd be missing some of those safety features. But at the same time, we'd be gaining, I guess, a very affordable way. Now, he in there said that by the end of 2017, by the end of this year, he said November or December, that a Model 3 should be able to drive from a parking lot in LA to a parking lot in New York City without the person having to touch the controls whatsoever. Then he kind of goes into, well, what is the difference between, like, can I go to sleep and then wake up at work? Well, that level of autonomy, I think, is probably 2 to 3 years out is what he said. So some pretty aggressive timelines. Really cool to hear him talk about it and see all that. So I highly recommend you check that out, and I'll put that in the link there at the end of this. Now, besides the Model 3, he also brought up the Tesla Semi. Now, the Tesla Semi, so a semi-truck, this is for trucking purposes, shipping things around. I don't know what it'd be called in a different language or something, so maybe, sorry if that doesn't translate well. But the idea there is to create, an electric truck. And one of the key things is that because it has the electric motor, first off, it's big, and so you'll have a lot of room for battery. And you also could do things like put solar panels on top of the really big, long structure to help it with range. So it'll have a long-range vehicle. It's already in prototype. Elon said that he had driven one around and that it was incredibly nimble and fun to drive, which is crazy. But this makes a lot of sense. And in fact, I think the GM guy, Bob, I forget Bob's name, said that they've electrified the wrong part of the business, right? So essentially the idea being that this is actually where electrification of vehicles makes a lot more sense because these are the big fuel consumers. Now, the quote Elon gave, which I thought was interesting, he said, with the Tesla Semi, we want to show that an electric truck can actually out-torque any diesel semi. In fact, if you had a tug-of-war competition, the Tesla Semi will tug the diesel semi uphill. And that actually, to anyone that owns a Tesla, doesn't surprise me. I know these are big, powerful vehicles, but the electric engine with its instant torque and a completely different torque curve than, say, a diesel engine, it's not surprising that it would have far more power. So, and again, it goes to the efficiency of an electric motor and how that works. So, I think that the Tesla Semi is going to be super interesting, and they said it'll be unveiled, I believe, this September. So stay tuned for that. We'll be digging into that, and I think this will be fun for the data side, where on Thursdays, I do my data analysis thing. Because there's so much data about the trucking industry, I'm really curious once we get into that data and start looking at it, what stories it's going to tell. Because it's a big industry here in the United States. Obviously, it's a big industry all over the world. And if we start eliminating the need for drivers, as well as reducing the emissions from these things, I think we're going to see a big shift in kind of society and economics and all that kind of stuff. So I'll definitely be digging into that in the future as we get more details about it. Okay, so next on the list, solar roof. So I've done a video on this where I took data from Consumer Reports and tried to figure out what the cost may be. And a lot of people have watched that and left me comments. So I'm going to be digging into this again pretty soon, where I try to figure out what is the cost, or maybe I can build a calculator or something to help you figure out what the cost of the solar roof would be. And this goes to my notion of what I call a sustainable homestead, where with a sustainable homestead, you have a perfect energy transport system, right? So you have solar energy powering your house and everything else you use, and then you have electric cars or trucks or SUVs or whatever, and then you have batteries to store all that offline. So the solar roof is a big one. Now, Elon, in the talk here, did reiterate. Now, he changed his mind, or he kind of went back on what he had said before. So the way it works, if you're unfamiliar, is that some cells, imagine a roof, just like your regular roof, but it's made with actually glass tiles that, if you look at them from the road, look perfectly normal. I mean, a little bit different, but pretty close to what you would normally see. And some of them, and most of them, if you can, have solar cells in them. And some don't, where maybe it doesn't make sense to have them, so that'll reduce the cost. But it all matches, and it's all that. Now, he said originally it would be less the cost of the roof plus the cost of electricity. So if you do a 20-year time span and you're paying $2,000 a year, let's say, in electricity, and here's where I would come up with a calculator to help you with this. If you take 20 years times $2,000 a year, so it's $40,000, and if you add in the cost of one of these nicer roofs, let's say I don't know, $7,000 to $10,000. Let's just say 10 for brevity's sake. You could say that, okay, so for less than $50,000, you could get this solar roof, which will look better, as they say. I think that's subjective. I think they look cool, but I'm a geek like that. They'll be more durable, and this is a fantastic, interesting thing. And they'll generate electricity, so you won't have to have the need for that. So that's great. One thing that he said in there was that about the warranty was that they thought about making the warranty for the solar roof infinity. But then that people would kind of make fun of them for this, and it wouldn't really, wouldn't really make sense. So instead, they're looking at, 25 years, I think he mentioned. But what he mentioned was that they're so strong and so durable that well after the house has collapsed, the glass tiles will still be there. So I think that's interesting. And in fact, there's another company that I've been following for a while called Solar Roadways. They're out of, I think, Kansas or Missouri, somewhere in the Midwest in the United States. And they have this idea of powering, or essentially building highways out of this incredibly powerful, strong glass, where they put solar panels underneath. So essentially on the road, when something isn't on top of it, like a car, it's just collecting solar all day, every day. And you could make, hundreds of miles of this. And there's other benefits to the solar roadways thing as well, where they could put in things there like internet lines. So you could have high-speed communications all throughout it. You also could have things like to heat the road in case, it snows or it's cold or icy. It could melt all that, so you wouldn't necessarily need snow plows and those kind of things. I'm not an expert at what that is, so forgive me if I'm wrong about that. But you could do things like that as well. If maybe there's an accident or an animal on the road, you could have like lights pop up and give you warning as you're driving. I mean, I think that this super hard glass combined with solar, whether it's a solar roof or a solar road, is fascinating. And I hope that will actually take on, and we can see some of that in the future, because I think that'd be great. Now, back to the solar roof. Elon was talking about this year they're going to roll it out with 2 types of roofs, and then they're going to announce 2 more next year. So that's exciting. This is all good stuff. And now these I believe are being built in their factory in Buffalo, New York that they bought. So it won't be kind of related to the Model 3. So that hopefully being separate there will be easy for it to succeed instead of having to compete for resources and stuff like that. They also asked Elon about how many houses, or when will all houses have this. And he said eventually he thinks all will. But, just because the technology is out tomorrow doesn't mean that everybody's going to go start replacing their roof. So he thinks, 40 to 50 years. But, within 5 to 10 years, it ought to be where it's almost unheard of that a home doesn't have solar in some way. And I do have videos coming out about that because I just have got solar on my house, and super excited about that. So there you go. Now, one of the things that he mentioned in the video too was about the Gigafactory. And the Gigafactory, they're going to announce 2 to 4 new Gigafactories. He said he thinks 4. So I don't know, we'll go with 4. And he said later this year, and they were asking where. And he said, we need to address the needs of a global market. So to me, that sounds like not the United States, which makes total sense. Things are expensive here. And especially if you're, say, building the Model 3 in China for the Chinese market, it would probably make sense to put one there, for example. Interestingly enough, how will this play out with the current administration in the United States? We'll see. But, these giant companies that are multinational, it's really hard to try to lock them down into doing everything in the U.S. So I don't think that'll be an issue. But new Gigafactories coming. Remember back in actually the remember the flood video with Leo, Elon mentioned it then, he reiterated it during this, that if we had 100 Gigafactories, we could essentially power the entire planet with renewable energy. I think there's other more interesting solutions. I'll put a link to this website where you can actually go see every different part of the world, how you could essentially power everything with renewable sources. And it's not just solar. I think solar's kind of a no-brainer for a lot of people, but there's also thermo and all these other different things. So I'll put lots of links and everything down into this, as well as on the blog on Teslanomics.co after this video uploads later tonight. Okay, on to the last topic of the day before we get to the live Q&A. And if you do have questions, I haven't been watching them as I've been flying by, so you can go ahead and re-ask them when I open that section. And we also have the super chat, so if you want yours to be featured, guaranteed, click on the little money icon and you can donate a couple bucks or whatever to get your question and your comment highlighted. So there you have that. Okay, now with Mars, or with respect to Mars, SpaceX is building a massive rocket that's the size of a 40-story building. And in the TED Talk, they have a video of this, so you can go check that out, which I think is super interesting. And by the way, just yesterday, actually, SpaceX did another launch and successful land of a rocket. And it's just fascinating that, we're actually, as a geek, as somebody that loves things like space and the cosmos and just astrophysics and all that stuff, it's exciting to actually be alive in a time where we kind of give a damn about this stuff. And this kind of goes to Elon's point. They asked him in the thing, they said, well, why not just deal with what the problems we have here on Earth? Why not just do this? And he's, obviously Tesla is doing some of those things. But why space? Like, why is this such a big deal? And he said that sustainable energy essentially is going to happen no matter what, that we will be forced into sustainable energy. And he says this, he says, if you don't have sustainable energy, you have unsustainable energy. The fundamental value of a company like Tesla is the degree to which it accelerates the advent of sustainable energy faster than it would otherwise occur. Meaning that basically, like, we're going to run out of stuff to burn and ways to power things if we, didn't evolve towards more sustainable ways like wind and solar. So that's going to happen. Now, Tesla's pushing that, and I think they have a genius way. I think a lot of the genius behind Tesla and Elon isn't even necessarily the technology, but it's how these things are being marketed and brought to market, and how they're actually being released. So I think that's actually the genius there, but that's going to happen anyways. So he goes on to say, to answer the question about why not just deal with Earth, why not, why space? He He says, but becoming a multi-planet species is not inevitable. And if you look at the progress in space, in 1969, we were able to send somebody to the moon. Then we had a space shuttle, which could only take people to low Earth orbit. Now we take no one to orbit. Nobody goes. It doesn't happen. And that's the trend. And so it's from this height of, in the late 60s with the moon program. And actually prior to that with Sputnik. And that's kind of where it started. In fact, there's a great podcast called Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And they go into this quite regularly. There's a series they did just a week ago. I forget what it's called. Something like Make America Smart Again. And they talk about this, where basically war and fear actually drove a lot of the innovation. In fact, that's what NASA was created for. Was in a response to Sputnik, which was the Russian program that had basically a spying satellite looking at things, looking at Earth. So a lot of this stuff came out of fear and anger or whatever, in literally wars or the Cold War. So, but since then, things have died down in that regard. So the space exploration, even NASA, has dramatically dropped. So, for him, he's saying that technology and specifically space stuff, he says we're mistaken in thinking that technology automatically improves. It only improves if a lot of people work very hard to make it better. And this actually, I can't agree more with. In fact, my Project Love Day, the Tesla commercial that I did, where if you guys watch that on my channel, that was basically the message. Like, look, like we've lost our sight on doing things that are actually changing the world, right? All we've done in the past decade, or that, it seems to me anyways, or the majority of it, is all digital stuff. It's taking better selfies. It's connecting with people. It's finding someone to hook up with, or, finding a ride somewhere, getting something delivered in 5 minutes that, from a drone. Like, all this stuff is interesting, but it's so digital. It's so meta. It's not real life. And so what I'm fascinated about with Tesla and SpaceX especially is how they're doing things that actually exist in the real world, not just in the digital world, right? All these new companies come out all the time, and it's, to me, I guess I've kind of desensitized towards a new app that's going to change the world or something like that. And when I see something like boring tunnels, even though I'm kind of short on it, I'm not sure it's a good idea, or creating reusable rockets, these things really inspire me and get me going. So that's my recap of the week. I figured now let's dive in and take a look at your questions. So if you have submitted any in the chat, I will get to those in 1 second. If you need to resubmit them, please do so now. I do have some that were submitted in advance. Let me pull those up. Okay, so I have a question from Ed, and it's extremely long. I'm not going to read it, but short story. He basically bought a Tesla recently, an S60, prior to it being removed from the line, and then had done a bunch of upgrades, and then they dropped the price to where he paid $5,000 for something that now is only a $1,500 upgrade. So what he's getting at is Tesla going to develop a more cadence, a more regular release cycle? Like, if you think about Toyota or someone else, they don't release new things and change pricing on their car of the same model that's already out mid-year. They do it, with next year's model or on a sale or something like that. So he's a little upset, and I've actually met other people. So to answer your question, Ed, is this happening? Whatever. Yes, I've heard a few other people. Actually met somebody at a supercharger when we were waiting that was really upset about Autopilot 2.0, where he had got his car and they just released it a month later or something. So I hope so. I hope the answer is that Tesla will settle down in terms of their product development and surprises. I think it's good to reduce uncertainty, which is great for the stock market, which is great for investors and actually just the health of the company. So I hope so. They're still very young, especially as a car company, and so I think they have a long road ahead of them, and they're very different in how they do things. But I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of started to roll out changes more on a regular basis, so you can kind of expect them instead of just sporadically, especially dropping the price to something like that. And I'm with you. You know, the story you submitted there about them not wanting to work with you is a bum deal, and you know, I'm sorry about that. That sucks. Okay, so Joseph asks, I wonder if Tesla will ever offer M3 with a superior battery that can get 400 plus miles. I was reading about some guys converting an old looking BMW to electric using all old parts and has a range of 425 plus miles per charge. Now, if novices can do that, I wonder what the guys at Tesla can really actually accomplish. So if they ever will offer a Model 3 with that battery, sure. I don't know if it's necessarily the battery that's going to push it above 400 miles or if it's going to be a more efficient use of power. You know, think about your phones. The technology that we use in these phones for the battery hasn't changed a lot in almost since the phones have been created. Battery efficiency and you know all that, like the longer living batteries, is because apps and the OS and everything else are becoming more efficient. So they're using less power. So it's not that the batteries are actually better and that they're lasting longer. It's that they're using less power. So I think that that will help us get there. Certainly they'll have models in the future that will have 400 plus miles. That's a given. That won't even be probably 2-3 years out, I would imagine. So yeah, so I think that's coming for sure. Okay. Douglas Crabb asks, federal law concerning their 200,000 production limit and their tax credits, will it be enforced? So the idea I think was getting at is, will the reduction of the federal tax credit in the United States, which occurs when a manufacturer of electric vehicles hits their 200,000th vehicle in the United States sold? Thanks to everyone for sending me all the details on that previously, by the way. Yes, I believe it would be enforced. In fact, there have been a few articles about the current Republican administration not like wanting to get rid of it in advance, and I don't know if they could do that because I think it's tied to some other legislative things. But yeah, I think it'll be enforced. I think Tesla will hit that mark this year. They're already, I think, at the end of 2016, up to 110,000 in the United States, the last data I saw. So add in Q1, and then, you know, we're coming out through Q2. I think it'll be as early as Q3. We'll just see how Model 3 production ramps up, but definitely before the end of the year, I believe it'll be gone. Now, I don't know. I can't really speak directly to the incentive programs in other parts of the world. I do know they exist, and in my EV Buyer's Guide, which is on my website, you can go get, I do have a link to that. It's a Wikipedia page. Thanks to Kaspars Crummins for your donation and for your support. I appreciate that. If you have a question or anything, go feel free to leave it there, and I'll make sure to get that. So thank you so much. Okay, my next question coming in is from Jean Blanchette, who joins us yet again. I think she submitted some stuff yesterday. She's from Quebec. Tell me if I'm saying that right or not. Hi, Ben. Do you think air suspension will be available on Model 3 base? That's a good question. I believe it's an upgrade on the Model S, so I'm going to say no. I don't believe it would be a part of the base $35,000 price tag, but it should be available as an option to upgrade, I would imagine. But who knows? You know, there have been a lot of downplay, and I don't know if that's just because they're trying to reduce the amount of the amount of demand for the Model 3 or what, but yeah, so they've been downplaying that, basically saying, you know, hey, if you have the Model S like I do, you're really going to be disappointed in the Model 3. They had a really kind of awkward blog post about it. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm excited because it's only a couple months away, and I love talking about this stuff. I'm going to do a lot more on the Model 3 coming up. I'm trying to figure out things for folks, if you guys, and let me know if you have a Model 3 reservation and or not. But I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff to try to help you get up to speed, so you can think about, you know, how to prepare for that, like what the costs will be, all those kind of things. So yeah. Hey Marcus, thanks again for joining me, man. I appreciate the support yet again. Okay, so those are all the questions that were submitted beforehand. Let me get into some of the questions on the live chat and see how we're doing. Are you Illuminati? Maybe. I wouldn't tell you if I was. No, that's funny. I thought electric motors were already 99% efficient. I don't think that's true. I think they're 92 or 93. I did a video on this, if you look on my channel, for EV versus ICE, and I break down, because there was some stuff that came out where the guy, Adam Conover, has a really funny show called Adam Ruins Everything, said Adam ruins EV or EVs or Tesla. And I got into it because I looked at the data and he was totally wrong about it. So the basic idea was that an electric motor, so all things considered, whether or not you get your energy from coal or nuclear or whatever, the electric motor is, I think it was 2.5 times more efficient. I think and this includes the reduction in power, or I'm sorry, the loss of energy to transport it from, say, a nuclear power plant or coal power plant, whatever, to your home. So they're not 99% efficient, that's for sure, but it's close. And go check out that video if you want more details in where I break that down. Do the apps on a Tesla really use that much power to help push ranges over 400 miles? I don't know what you're talking about there. I'm not sure that we have a Tesla that goes over 400 miles. I suppose if you traveled at like 10 miles an hour or something like that. Zachary Rich. Ben, do you think that there will still be federal tax incentive by the time I get my Model 3 in 2017, 2018? That's a great question. I'm going to try to answer that more scientifically soon by digging into the actual data as much as I can. See, the problem is that Tesla doesn't release a lot of these numbers, so we kind of have to back into them, and they only release quarterly numbers for that. So it's not like I can go to their website and find the active count or something. And maybe they'll add that by the time this is over. But yeah, so it depends when you ordered, and if you're getting it this year, I would say there's a high chance. But to get it this year, that means you're either, there's lots of factors. So the first people that are going to get them are employees. So scratch that. I assume you're not an employee. Then if you're already an owner, then you get priority access. Then based on when you ordered it, if you ordered it the day of or prior to the unveiling, then you get extra priority access. Then if you live in California, because that's where they're made, you get priority access. So there's all these things that will play into when you get it. I think most people that are not in the United States are going to be waiting at least until mid-2018, just because of their rollout schedule and all that kind of stuff. So will it be around? It depends. If you think you're going to get yours this year, because any of those things I mentioned apply to you, then I think there's a good chance. If it's not until next year, I think they're going to hit that number and probably, probably not. And actually, I'm very curious. Now, okay, let me stop there before everyone jumps on me about this, because I said this before. The federal tax credit, I'm going to do a whole video that really goes into this because there's so many questions around it. I've fumbled it 1,000 times talking about it. It doesn't just disappear immediately. After they hit that number, the following quarter, it drops to half. Then it's that way for 2 more quarters. Then it gets reduced, I think, to half again. I'll have to look at the details. So basically 6 quarters or a year and a half after they hit that mark there, that's when the federal tax credit is really gone. And again, this is assuming that the current administration of the United States doesn't try to nix it through some other means or whatever. But yeah, it's not forever. It's not a guarantee. I hate the idea of thinking about, that's why I'm buying an EV. But I do know that a lot of folks, count on that. And to be fair, if you guys are curious, I bought mine used, so I did not get that credit. So there you go. And I would recommend that, actually. There's a lot of great used EVs out there. So you have that. Thanks for the question. All right. Johan Bendixson, what do you think about nuclear power? I think it doesn't make any CO2 or hardly any. So that's awesome. That's better than things that do. It isn't renewable. So, there's that. That sucks. But I'm actually fascinated right now. This might be, it's kind of outside of the scope of what I normally talk about. But I believe in France, in Europe, I think France or maybe Germany, there is the first attempt at a nuclear fusion reactor, which would if that works and this model goes through, that would essentially solve a lot of the world's energy needs with a not renewable but very low emitting source. So I'm fascinated with that. If nuclear fusion actually happens, and I think so. Right now we have nuclear fission, if I'm correct. Somebody please correct me. I'm a geek and I think I'm close, but that's it. James Cooper, any advice for someone with a ton of issues with the new Model S 90D that service still haven't managed to fix after 6 months? That sucks, man. I don't know. I don't know what issues you're having. I would hope that the service center, especially with a brand new 90D, one of the highest end models, they would be taking care of you. I will point you to another YouTuber who had some stories about this. His name's Marquez Brownlee, or MKBHD. He has a couple million followers or something like that. Go check him out. He has a whole series he did because he has a P100D, and he had some really crazy issues, and they actually flew out an engineer. He lives in New Jersey or New York, and they flew out an engineer to work on his car and deal with it. So go check that out, because maybe there's some good advice in there. Okay, what other questions are there? Let me scroll up here. Arlene Allen? Any reason why the 2170 battery won't result in higher density, greater range packs? I'm wondering on the marketing and profit side of the equation. Yeah, so if you don't know, and there's another YouTuber who does some cool stuff. His name's Jehu Garcia, or Eru. I don't know how to say it in Spanish. I should know how to say that. And he actually he's super technical, really cool stuff. He actually breaks these down, and he makes one. He made a DIY Tesla Powerwall. So that was kind of funny and something that's really cool. So check his channel out, Jehu Garcia. And he shows all about this. And when you break it down, the Tesla battery is essentially nothing but a bunch of little AA size batteries all networked together. Even the ones in the car, that's essentially what it is. And so what you're talking about here, the 2170 is the new type of cell that they're manufacturing. And I'm not an expert in this, but I understand that they will have a greater density, which should result in longer range cars. So I would say yes. But again, I would probably go ask Jehu and see what he says, because he's certainly an expert at this. And he has a super cool video showing you how to basically buy old laptops which have these batteries in them, and then take those out and then use those for your Powerwall. So there you go. Kaspar Scrummins, hey, thanks. How about electric car conversion kits from Tesla? Is it possible? Is it possible to convert it? Yes, absolutely. Is it going to be from Tesla? I would say absolutely not. I do not see them making a product like this. It's too messy. There's too many things that can go wrong. And from a product development standpoint, I think it's a bad idea. There are companies out there. Here in Southern California, there's one called EV West, I believe it is, who helps do this. So, you can probably search and find folks, depending on where you live, that will help with this. And if not, hey, do it yourself. Make a video about it. I'd love to see it. It's really, honestly, not that hard if you have kind of a knack for working with stuff like that. All right. Couple more questions here. They're 18650 cells, not AA. Right, but they're about the size of a AA battery if you look at them. That's my point. When you get your Model 3, are you planning on selling your Model S? From Marcus Hayes. Sorry, it's getting warm in here. My AC is turning on. No, I'm not. Because I don't think I'm going to like the Model 3 nearly as much as my Model S. And that's because that's what Tesla is telling me. But at the same time, I think that I may keep both. So my wife right now has an SUV that is gas powered, and we want to become all electric, but we're not sure if a Model 3 for me and her having the Model S would be good. Or if maybe the Model 3 isn't going to be, nice, because I've had a Model S for a while now. I'm not going to like it enough. So that's a question. But no, I'm not going to get rid of my Model S. If anything, if I were to get rid of my Model S, I would just upgrade to another Model S. So Hey, Sid. Thanks for the love, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate you joining us again. Um, yeah, so okay, let me go on to the next one. So yeah, keeping the Model S for sure, maybe upgrading to the new Model S, and or a Model X instead of a Model 3. It all depends. Once I have it, so because here's the thing, I could buy a used Model S with a lot of great features that has free supercharging and all this stuff for about the same price as a really souped up Model 3. So the question is, will the Model 3 really souped up be that awesome? Or will it be kind of mediocre compared to the Model S? Now, one of the main difference, which there's no way around, is the size of the car, which I don't really care about the overall size. I care about storage. And so the Model S has been a great family car for me and my wife and my son. So those things are there, right? So those are the kind of things to consider, right? It's not just about the fun tech inside of it. But anyways, I'll definitely be talking about that once I get it, and I hope to get my Model 3 pretty early, and I will absolutely be posting about it as much as I can, and really breaking it down to help you guys figure out what you want to do. So there you go. Bruno Alves, different between 75 and 75D is only 10 miles. Well, okay, so the difference between a regular and dual motor thing, Tesla, is that the regular one has a rear wheel drive and it is a bigger engine in the back. The dual has two smaller ones, front and back, which is much better for traction control. It usually results in faster performance, better handling, and better range. So there you go. So that's kind of the main difference there. The battery is the same size, so you're going to get a good amount of range, or very similar range, and only the real difference in terms of range is going to be the efficiency you gain from having this two small motors, which is still surprising to me that's actually more efficient. But hey, there you go. All right. Yeah, and everyone seems to be joining in on that. Okay, I'll take two more questions and then I'm done. I see a comment here from Tony Sui. MKBHD said his power steering failed for his Tesla. Yep, kind of scary, kind of crazy. Go check his video out. Go check his videos out. Check all of them out. He's fantastic. I love his work. Fabian Cosilio, do you have any idea how Tesla's fleet learning works? I hear there are only around 10 kilobytes worth of black and white camera pictures per mile, which will be sent to the mothership beside other data. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that. If you look at their self-driving video, it has far more detailed photos than just tiny black and white pictures. I do have a friend who is sort of a machine learning and computer vision expert that I want to bring on the show. And I want to interview him and just kind of have him break it down. So I'm a data guy. I've been working with data forever, but mostly in the context of helping businesses, become better at marketing or, operations and things like that. Not so the machine learning stuff is it's in the data realm, but it's a bit more advanced than I'm confident talking about it. So I may bring him on soon. So yeah, and Sid has a question here. It seems to me that part of the challenge isn't building tunnels, though a worthy goal, but in how to build out the infrastructure of the physical tunnel. And so, Sid, I don't know if you saw the video, but they did talk about this, where the typical time it takes, they have a funny analogy, but they dig the tunnel, then they have to put in the infrastructure. And so they bought a boring machine, and they're trying to reverse engineer it and kind of break it down and build something that's much faster. That will kind of do this all in one. So go check out the TED Talk where he talks about it. And he said, that the analogy they had was they have a snail. I forget his name, Gary or something, an actual snail. And the snail is, at his max speed is 14 times faster than the fastest boring machine in the world. And so what they're trying to do is trying to beat Gary the snail. And part of that he talked about was to build the infrastructure into it in advance, or as it's kind of being done, rather than after the fact. And then also part of the deal is with that there won't be people down there, and there won't be any person driving. So everything will be totally controlled. So you'll almost completely eliminate accidents, hopefully entirely if you can. And so really you'll need very minimal room. In fact, the size of a tunnel right now is so big that that's actually part of the reason why they're doing why it takes so long. And so what they're talking about, instead of, I think it's 28 feet, getting that down to somewhere around 12 feet. So that will significantly reduce the size of the tunnel, which will then also increase the speed. Now, the reason, again, I'm short on this is a little bit because it just seems, I don't know, it seems, I just don't like the idea of being stuck in a tunnel like that. Maybe if they put LED panels all along the way and made it look like outside, or, you know, maybe a ride from Disneyland or something. But right now, it's not there. So yeah, Sid, go check out the, I'll put the link after this video's up later, but just go, if you search, in fact, I emailed it out this morning. If you just search for Elon Musk TED Talk 2017, you'll see it. And he talks about it. It's super interesting when they talk about that. But yeah, essentially they want to get, I think they want to beat the snail. So that's at least a 14x improvement on the speed of building a tunnel. So, and Teslanomics had a good article that I'll also link to about how they can do that. So. Geronimo, how many people work for Elon Musk in all of his companies? Well, Solar City has about 30,000 employees. I'm not sure about Tesla themselves. And then SpaceX, yeah, it's a good, I don't know, I would guess 100,000 people, maybe. But hopefully it's not so, I don't know, tied together like that. Hopefully it's, you know, the management aspect of everything is pretty federated, so. Okay. So I appreciate your time here today, guys. If I didn't answer your question, I apologize, but go ahead and get on the email list at Teslanomics.co, and I will email you out later this week an invite to then submit questions for next week's live stream. Also, make sure, you know, give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it today and if it was helpful and if you liked it. And if you have any other feedback or anything, please leave it in the comments down below. It takes YouTube usually an hour, or actually, no, sorry, like 4 or 5 hours to process these videos. So it'll be a little bit later when this posts tonight, but I will be emailing it out to everyone on the email list tomorrow morning when that goes out. So appreciate all that. And don't forget, this Thursday, I made a calculator to help you figure out how much it'll cost to charge your Tesla at your house. So stay tuned for that on Thursday, and I will see you guys back here next time. Where I found this. It was on Bloomberg, where they're a great source of data on this. And there were some recent predictions that this company made, and they were talking about just the future of the auto industry and what's going to happen there. So I found this. I am long on this because, you know, car companies and energy companies get it. The transition to renewable forms of transportation and energy are sort of inevitable. And these guys putting these numbers out there really help the whole industry. And it's always good to see that. So I would encourage you, and the link to this video will be in the description. You can go find that. And there's a great video that Bloomberg put together. As you would imagine, they're, you know, a great media company. And you can check that out. But that's kind of the main point there, is that they're big on this. Now, part of the reason is because battery prices are dropping, and Tesla is playing a big part of this with the Gigafactory, or the multiple Gigafactories, which we'll talk about here in a second. Now, in 2018, Volkswagen is actually making a big play as well with an Audi SUV and the first high-speed U.S. charging network to rival Tesla's supercharger network. So Volkswagen is getting into this game big, and then after that, you're going to see a lot more of the big players in. So Jaguar, Volvo are also both promising cars on the way. And by 2020, that's when it really starts to reign EVs. And Mercedes, VW, General Motors, Ford, all of these cars are releasing dozens of new electric vehicles. So in the next 2 to 3 years, I think we're going to see worldwide just a big boom for electric vehicles, and I think that's fantastic. I'm a huge fan, obviously. I assume you guys probably are too, or interested. And there's so many benefits besides the environmental one, you know, cost benefits, efficiency gains, it's quiet, and apologize, they're doing major construction outside of my office here, so if you hear any of that, you know, there's a part of it right there. So VW actually, and there's an article from Electric about this, which I'll switch over to now, is planning to do a $10 billion investment in electric vehicles. They're still doing more on the other side, but there was a really interesting quote here from their chief executive that said the future of driving is electric. I'll highlight it here for you so you can see that, and maybe I'll even try to blow this up. We'll see if... I don't know how this browser works. Volkswagen chief executive Matthias Mueller conceded that the future of driving is electric. That is crazy. And if you don't know, Volkswagen actually owns a ton of brands and everything. So they're not just a small manufacturer that sells like cute Jettas and stuff like that. They sell, tons and tons of different cars for different brands that they own. So that's big, and that just kind of reinforces the long position here that EVs are just getting bigger and better. Now, another sign of this is Leonardo DiCaprio becoming the spokesperson for Hey everyone, thanks for joining me here today on Teslanomics Live. This week there is insurmountable things to talk about. I've got a new live streaming setup, so hopefully the audio and everything will be good, and we can just kind of dive right into this stuff. First and foremost, thank you all for joining me, and thanks for all the questions that people submitted in advance. I ping everyone on the email list in advance, so if you're not on that, go to Teslanomics.co. Make sure to join the email list, and then you will be prompted every time we do this with the ability to submit your questions in advance, which will almost always ensure that they get added. So without that, I thought let's dive right into it. So first up, my long for the week. And if you don't recall, I kind of break this into two major segments, the long and the short. So the long is something I'm betting on. So I'm borrowing a term from kind of the stock market where you're long on a stock or a company. And my long here is the EV boom, and it's happening. We've talked a lot about it, but even now some major oil companies are coming out predicting that the EV market will grow to be about 30% of the overall market by 2030. And let me show you BYD, which is a Chinese manufacturer. So let me show you this here, and I'll put a link to this. I'll play the video, but just so as in that you can that you can see what's going on there. Now, this is Leonardo DiCaprio, who obviously is a big supporter of fighting climate change with his movie Before the Flood, which I highly recommend if you haven't went out to see that. But BYD is really doing a big push here. And in fact, China is where they are the biggest EV market by far. By early next year, Beijing is going to require automakers in China to ensure that at least 8% of all vehicles they manufacture are electric. Now that's big because there's a lot of cars and a lot of people in China. So the country had more than 1 million electric vehicles as of 2016. That's an 87% increase over the previous year. And if you look at a video where I talked about this called EV sales in 2016 should scare the oil industry or something like that, and I broke it down, and in that, the data there also shows that EVs in China are extremely popular and growing rapidly because of all the stuff that they're doing. Let me stop that video from playing. So China is where it's at, and it's big there, and I think we're going to continue to see China pushing forward, not only with EVs in general, but just all kinds of things with solar and renewable energy. I mean, they are having to have a lot about, they're having to deal with a lot of the pollution issues that here in the U.S. we dealt with back in the 70s with the Clean Air Act. So, kudos to them, and I think it's exciting to see this. But you can go watch the commercial. It's kind of odd to me just to see Leo like that. But hey, I'm proud that they're doing stuff like that and that they're making a big difference. So there you have it. Now, the next thing to talk about is my short. But let me mention first, so Elon did a TED Talk, and they just this morning released the video of it. It's about 40 minutes long. I'm not going to play it for you here. I'll put a link to it so you can go check it out. But I highly recommend it if you're a fan of this stuff, where he goes into all kinds of different topics, and we'll be covering a lot of those here in just a second. But this is actually my short. My short for the week, something I'm betting against, is this boring company. It's fun to say, and I know there's a lot of fans out there, friends of mine, that think it's great. The basic idea, and let me go to this is a photo of the machine. So boring, not as in lame or like not interesting, but boring as in digging tunnels. This comes from basically Elon hating traffic in LA and wanting to create what he considers a three-dimensional driving environment where we build buildings up from the ground and we have 3 dimensions there, but we drive just 2-dimensionally on the surface of the road. So he wants to create a 3-dimensional one down below, and he can go, he goes into detail about why. But I want to show you this video here, and this is posted on Tesla.